Okay, welcome back. The next event we're talking about is the Olympic Games. Now it's got a massive profile. It's called the greatest show on earth, and it is also known as the greatest sporting spectacle. Every nation in the world that's recognised by the UN has at some point or another taken part in the Olympic Games. So if you imagine that, it's a huge, huge event for everybody to take part in. Not only that though, it's the prestige. If we go back to the origins, the Olympic Games started in ancient Greece, in a place called Olympus, okay, just out to the north of Athens, and it was there to find out who the most virile, the most strong, the fastest, and basically the biggest man was. It was originally only competed by men, but then gradually some women started to get some events in there, although they were seen as just more like a sideshow, a little bit of a laugh just to see as entertainment for the people who were going to watch. But those people who actually came back and won those ancient games were heralded as heroes, as the strongest people, and somebody for the village and the community that they were in at the time to be proud of. And that's where the Olympic Games started. The Games then were rekindled by a guy called Francis de Coubertin, okay, who was a Frenchman. Okay. He loved the idea of the Olympic Games, bringing people together. And not only was he inspired by the ancient Olympics, but he came along to some other sporting events that you'd look at maybe at A level, and you'd look at the Wenlock Games that happened in Britain and some other old sporting events that happened at the time, which were like mini Olympics and still happen today. But then in 1896 he said, let's go back to the old Olympic traditions. Let's look at what they used to talk about, what they used to make those heroes of. And they had the Games in Athens in 1896, the home of the Olympics. Originally, there was only a few sports. There was track and field, some of them had a football game, even rugby and things were in there, as well as archery and some other lesser sports. As the Games have gone on, there have been more and more sports added. And I think there's over 100 sports that are competed for now in both the Olympic Games and the Paralympics. In 1900 it was taken over to Paris, and then the real sort of history started in 1908. The reason the Olympics are so important is that they tell a story. They have themes around those Olympics. And that's sort of some of the things that you need to know about for your exam. What are the themes of certain Olympics and why were they so popular? Why were they remembered? Why were they so important at the time? So 1908 was heralded as the first major games. It was competed with nearly over half the countries around the world, which at the time, if you imagine what the place was like, you couldn't just jump on a plane. You couldn't just get in a car and go to the Olympics. Okay? It was a major undertaking, especially for a team like Australia, who had to travel for over 2 weeks to actually just get there before they even competed. People weren't paid. They didn't have to take time off work. They had to give up their own time just so they could compete in this magnificent Olympiad. Then, the real controversy started. There was a break between wars in 1940 and 1918 because the Olympics obviously happens every 4 years. In 1936, Hitler decided that he was going to use the Olympic Games as a tool for him to show how great the Germans were, how fantastic a country they were. And he wanted to use it to promote two things: his politics and his ideals, and that this Aryan race that he was trying to create was superior to everyone else. So, as you can see from the picture, you can see everybody there, okay, giving the national salute of the Nazis, okay, Heil Hitler. Again, as said, Hitler used it as propaganda to show that Nazi Germany was a strong, powerful nation that could compete with everyone. They weren't just somebody who was a little backwater in the middle of Europe. They could compete with the major, more established nations in the world. He used this to promote his idea of the Aryan race. Blue eyes, blonde hair, white, Scandinavian type people who were superior in strength, intellect and obviously performance. This was obviously disproved by the real story of 1936, that Jesse Owens, a black American, won 4 Olympic gold medals. Okay, something that is still a massive benchmark in track and field. 1948 was promoted, but mainly because of the War and Peace. Okay, the war had ended in 1945. It was the first Olympiad, and everybody was invited to compete. It was there as shown as an olive branch to show to other people that everything that had happened over the past 10, 11 years was forgotten. Okay, before the war even started. It was then, in 1972, that the Winter Olympics started. The winter sports thought that they'd like to be part of that sort of Olympiad festival, an ideal, and they created their own Winter Olympics, which again happens every 4 years. It used to happen in the same year as Olympic year, but because of the size of the event, it started to get cut down, and they had them 2 years apart. So the last Winter Olympics was 2010 in Vancouver, followed by the 2012 London Olympics in the summer coming up. There's an ice hockey player. 1968, very famous for the politics and racism row. At the time, America was embroiled in a massive race row about how blacks weren't part of the normal society. And the two athletes who won the 200 metres, they came up with a salute, the Black Power salute. When they collected their medals, they raised their fist as a mark of solidarity to all their black brothers. It's still, again, a very famous image of the Olympics. The black gloves signifying their allegiance to the Black Panthers. 1972, Munich was a huge games. The joy element, it was very successful because there was this one girl, Nadia Comaneci, who was the first person to score 10 out of 10 in the gymnastics, and she really set the games alight. Everyone was talking about her, publicity. She was only 14 years old at the time. Really, really huge, popular figure. However, 1972 will eternally be remembered for the use of terrorism in the games. Some Israeli athletes were kidnapped and shot at the end of it by Palestinians who wanted to get their point across that they believed in a free Palestine and that they were therefore being imprisoned in their own country. And they ended up being a hostage situation, which put a real mark on the games with the death of these two Israeli athletes. Really, really sad times. 1976, Montreal was a financial disaster. They built this huge stadium, they had all these great plans, but it actually left Montreal as a city, and a lot of the Canadian district of Quebec, where Montreal is, in a financial ruin. So not only did they have this game and this massive stadium that no one could pay for, they were in debt for tens of years afterwards, and they had this massive, massive stadium that everybody really resented in the city as it reminded them of these failed games and the price that it cost. However, the games itself were supposed to be very good. 1980, again we go back to the politics issue. Countries are now starting to realise that the games is an easy way to make a statement. 1980, the Russians had invaded Afghanistan. It's a very similar sort of situation to now with the war in Afghanistan, but the Russians were involved this time. America and Britain and other Western countries were really opposed to them going into Afghanistan and going to the war, but they said, we're not going to send your athletes. Britain stopped short of sending athletes. They put pressure on them, and there's been a really interesting story recently of Alan Wells, who won the 100 metres at the Moscow Olympics, who sent pictures of people who'd been mutilated and killed and tortured by the Russian army, to put a bit of pressure on him, saying, look how bad the situation is in Afghanistan, we don't think you should go. But the British government gave the people the choice of going, and in the end, over 90% of the athletes who were selected to go to Moscow went in the end. 1984, tit for tat. The Americans didn't go to Moscow in 1980, so in 1984 the Russians didn't go to America for the LA Olympics. The LA Olympics was the first sign of the commercial Olympics as well. It was a sign that money and sponsorship was going to help it out. So we didn't want the IOC, who run the Olympic Games, didn't want to have the same mistakes in Montreal, so they invited sponsors such as Coca-Cola, McDonald's and so on to come in and help sponsor the Games and make it a massive success. 1988, sole controversy. Ben Johnson was the first person in Olympic Games to be made as a massive drugs cheat. It was, however, subsequently found that there were lots of other cheats before, but Ben Johnson was such a high-profile cheater in the biggest event of the Games, the 100 metres, that he will always be remembered for that one incident there. He broke the world record. Everyone thought it was fantastic. He was a freak of nature, but in the end, he just ended up being a cheat. Barcelona, shop window. Barcelona used it as a tool for them to actually find and show how great their city and their country was. It was a time of low economic status for them, but they came in and they showed how good they were. They wanted people to come so they could use it for tourism and industry growth in later years. 96, back to America, money talks. The Olympics was in a pretty difficult situation, but they decided to go to Atlanta because there was lots of corporate sponsorship money there that was available. Sydney, some people heralded it as the best games ever, and it was a massive success in every aspect. The modern day Olympiad, and everybody carried on saying how brilliant it was. The stadium, the people, the atmosphere, and the general standard of the games. Really, really popular. Again, very famous incident with Cathy Freeman, who was an Aboriginal athlete for Australia, came in, she won the 400 metres for Australia and was heralded a national hero. 2004, the Games returned to Athens. Okay, again, so blighted by stadiums not being ready on time, not getting there, not being that accessible, and certain financial problems. But it was seen as a really good move because people wanted the Games to go back to where it originally started from. And some of the original Olympic venues that were used in the ancient Olympics was also used as well. There's a picture of Athens. 2008, the biggest game so far. Again, the Chinese government used it as a propaganda tool to show their power and their strength and how great a country they were, becoming a new industrial superpower. However, there was a lot of controversy with it, with the human rights record that China had, not being able to have more than one child. All these things were raised, and it was saying that it was wrong for them to actually be holding those Olympics. Was it a commercial opportunity or a communist success? This was taken a couple of years ago, so London 2012, we now know that London 2012 will be happening in a matter of months. How will it affect our country? What will it be all about? The bidding process talked about legacy, that the country of Britain and East End of London will be regenerated and therefore be going on and building athletes and promoting Olympic values in the future. Only time will tell. So, in summary, I think what you need to remember is Summer and Winter Olympics. Okay? The Games don't only stand for the outstanding things that happen, but it's trying to mirror life. Okay? Francis de Coubertin, the original the original founder of the modern Olympiad, talked about it's not the winning or losing that is important, but it's the taking. But such as in life, it's the taking part. And he talks about these few things: precision, the pain that will go with winning or losing, the glory, and how that affects people in the medals tables, the fans who come to watch and support, the mascots that are there to promote the Games, eliminating sporting myths, and then the three Olympic mottos: Citius, Altius, Fortius. Higher, faster, stronger. Just wondering what you think the purpose of the Games is. Be quite a good idea. See how much you can remember of that, and whether or not you think that was any use in terms of you taking your opinions forward into London 2012. Thanks for listening.